There's 3 ways to exit the roofing business, and it doesn't always mean taking a big check to the bank, cashing out, and leaving your roofing business behind. A few weeks ago, I got a call from one of our long-term clients that told me that his head of sales had ripped him off for over $2 million in jobs, and in a separate incident, his bank accounts got hijacked, causing crazy cash flow issues. This particular guy went from sitting in the role of a CEO to firing his entire team and having to take back over the day-to-day, generating the leads, running the sales appointments, putting the estimates together, and then managing all of the projects. But here's the thing, now that we've helped him rebuild the plan and get back on track for where he's taking the business over the next 90 days, he's headed towards his first exit in business, which is exactly what I want to talk to you guys about today. So let's head back to my office and I'll share the 3 exits that every roofing entrepreneur goes through. Let's head to the office. See, when people talk about an exit in their roofing business, they're usually talking about the day where they sell their business, they cash the big check, they take all the money to the bank. But the reality is that's actually the 3rd exit of the 3 exits of your roofing entrepreneur life cycle. The issue, or the big problem, is essentially that most roofing business owners skip the first 2 and then wonder why they can't build a scalable business, or a business that can't operate without them being the brain with 1,000 arms, telling everyone exactly what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. So let me break down all 3 exits for you. I'll explain what they are, how they work, and how you can execute on them. So the first exit we're going to talk about is actually called exiting the field. And when we exit the field, we are essentially going from being a worker to becoming more of a manager. All right? And so when we go from being a manager to becoming, or when we go from being a worker to becoming a manager, it essentially means that we are able to get our time back. We have people that can do the things we want them to do and how we want them done. But if you're the one still climbing the roofs, you're answering the phones, you can't take a vacation without your phone blowing up, then this is the exit that you need to focus on first. So let's talk about how to actually go about that and how to tactically exit the field. Now, to successfully exit the field, you have to systematize the business. And I understand that systematizing the business sounds like fluffy talk that you would see, consultants or marketers or whatever, whoever's trying to sell you something for your business, utilizing their day-to-day marketing jargon. But the reality is we don't utilize that as an amorphous term. It actually means something here in my world. And so when we talk about systematizing the business, we're talking about outlining what you do, how you do it, and then who does it. And so let's start with the what. So to show other people what you do, we quite literally need to put what you do down on paper, or to document it in some form of a digital form where we can literally visually show a representation of that to other people. And so maybe you've seen this in workflows or flow charts, or sometimes people call it business mapping, but we literally, quite literally, need to map out step by step by step how you get your leads, how you close your deals, and how you fulfill on the promises that you make to your clients, and also how we collect money. Here's the thing, usually when we get brought in to help a company start to lay some of this stuff out, the processes are crystal clear, but they're crystal clear in the owner's head, or the key people that are running the business. It's all the processes are just clear in their head. And so what we want to do is we want to remove them from their head and get them out where other people can see them. And we do this because when we bring people into the organization that aren't familiar with what you're doing on the day-to-day, we need to be able to explain to them how things work here. Let me give you a little bonus tactic really quick. So when we're creating these processes, step 1 is figuring out, like, where does the process begin? Okay, so when I think about the sales process, for instance, The sales process begins when I have an opportunity, a roof to go look at, a roof scheduled to go walk. But I also want to lay out, where does that process end? And so the sales process might actually end at a signed contract, or maybe you have your salespeople go all the way through doing like a pre-construction walkthrough or something. But whatever that is for you, we want to nail down like, where does it start and where does it end? And then what we do is we go back to where it starts and we just ask ourselves one simple question. It's like, we start here and then what? And as soon as we know what that next step is, we ask ourselves, then what? And then what? And then what? Until we get to the end stage. And that is how we lay out a process systematically. And so once we have your processes, the next piece is creating playbooks. Now, a lot of people get confused when I start talking about, terminology as in processes versus playbooks. Like, what does that actually mean? Let me explain it to you like this. The processes are full of stages. I just shared with you my exact process, the simple question I asked myself on dialing in those processes, which was, then what? But when we have that process dialed in, you're probably thinking, okay, in my sales process, there's things that nobody could replicate that I do, right? I have this unique skill set that no one else in the world can do, and we all tell ourselves that, right? It's it's a thought that is common amongst all of us roofing business owners. And the thing is that you're probably right, and you're probably right for right now, just not forever. And so when we're looking at those processes and we're trying to figure out, what playbooks do we need to create, I think the world of entrepreneurship and all of the famous books like, the Tractions, the Rocket Fuels, the E-Myths of the world, they lie to us. They tell us that we need to document all of our processes. But I'll tell you guys what, and I only know this from experience, that when you document your entire process and you build out these massive SOP libraries, nobody is going to ever even open them up. They're going to collect dust on a shelf if you're printing them off. They're going to collect virtual dust in a Google Drive or a Dropbox somewhere if you put them digitally, and they're just not going to be leveraged. Instead of going through and saying we need to create an SOP or a document or a playbook or a checklist or whatever for every step and every stage of all of our processes, we just look at that. And I think back to those stages where I was saying, oh, this is the only thing I can do. This is critical. This is a power stage of what we do. And I say, those are the ones that need playbooks. And I'll let you in on how I create my playbooks. So once those are identified, we say, okay, all the things that we can't afford to mess up. We can't afford to have things slip through the cracks, and that's why I'm still doing them. I don't take time out of the business. I don't close the business down for 2 weeks to document all those processes. I simply record myself doing them while I'm doing them. And internally, we have a process that's just called document while you do. And so if I'm on the computer screen, guess what? I'm recording the screen and talking through it as I do it. If I'm out in the field, I'm setting up the camera just like I'm talking to you with the camera on a tripod, and I'm recording myself doing a repair, welding a seam, installing a T-patch, fixing a flashing, whatever it is, and I'm recording myself so that I can not only, hand that video over to somebody, but I could also talk to the camera or talk out loud while I'm doing the thing. And so if you remember just a few minutes ago what I was talking about in systematizing the business, which is what we're going through now, we talked about documenting what we do. That was the processes. Talking about how we want it done. That's the documenting our playbooks while we're doing the thing. And the third piece is the people. So we have the processes, the playbooks, and the people. What the people mean, or what I mean by the people, is essentially that we want to look at those processes and we want to assign every single stage to a person or a role within the company. And in the beginning, guess what? Your name's going on a lot of those stages. But over time, you're able to see like, okay, I'm doing all of these things. What's taking up the most time? And I'm getting the least leverage for my time and energy that I'm putting into that. And you can start to pluck those random stages out of the process to create an entire role and then hire for that role. So again, as a quick recap, we talked about the processes, the playbooks, and the people, which tells you what you do, how you want it done, and then who is going to do all of those things. That's for the first exit, which is essentially exiting the field. It's how we go from being a worker in our business, essentially doing the day-to-day, moving to more of a manager role and managing the people, the processes, and the playbooks, making sure they're getting done how we want them done. All right, so this next exit is how we go from being a manager to actually becoming a true CEO. And I'm not talking about a CEO like all of the guys on Facebook and LinkedIn that have CEO next to their title, but they're still doing all of the things that a worker is doing. So when we go from being a manager to becoming a CEO, what we're essentially doing is we are exiting the day-to-day, okay? And let me show you what we need to do to get you out of the minutia of the day-to-day. But I'll tell you one thing. We should not have you focused on exiting the day-to-day before we have systematized the business. So if you haven't built the process, built the playbooks, and put the people in place to do those things, we cannot be focused on this next exit, okay? But let's assume that we do have the business systematized. What does this actually look like? Like I said, if you've done the work and you're ready to create real autonomy inside the business where the systems can stand on their own 2 feet and they can operate without you having your hands in everything and kind of having that founder's touch all across the business, then there's just 3 more things that we need to build out in order to get you out of that manager seat and into the role of a CEO. First things first, you need a plan. So we've got to understand what is the point, like what is the vision, what is the mission of this business, and where are we trying to go? What are we trying to build? And I'll let you guys in on a little secret. So the first 10 years of my career in the roofing industry, I did a really good job at adopting other people's goals and ambitions and everything that the industry talks about, from, at first just wanting to do $1 million in sales, and then wanting to build a $5 million business, and then a $10 million business. And then ultimately through our acquisition, I was all on board for building this $100 million business. And I was building businesses, I was doing things in my day-to-day that I didn't actually care about. I was chasing dreams by default rather than living a life by design, or even, just even building a business by design. So we need to get clear so that you don't do the same thing on what you want out of this. What do you want for your family and your friends and your colleagues and the people closest to you? And also, like, what impact do you want to make? It doesn't have to be like in the roofing industry. What kind of impact do you want to make? It could just be in your community. What kind of impact do you want to have on the people in the village in which you live, right? And so when we think through it in that framework, it's more of putting the businessman before the business plan, or generating the business plan from the businessman, which again is building by design. And so on this mission in exiting the day-to-day, in going from sitting in the manager seat where we're kind of, telling people what to do, managing what's going on in the minutia of the day or the week or the quarter, and moving into that CEO role, we first need the plan, okay? And once we have that plan, what do we want our life to look like? What do we want our family's life to look like? What do we want to do within the community over the next 2 or 3 years? We can then say, okay, I now have my goal. I now have the systems. The next mechanism we need is actually a scorecard. And what we're trying to do is we want to measure the delta between where we're at, how our systems are operating, right? How the processes are working, how well our playbooks are, in operation, how good the people are that we have against our actual goals, right? We're trying to figure out, are we on track or off track, headed in the right direction, and we need vector points along the way. So for me, when I'm creating a scorecard from scratch, I go back all the way to the beginning when I created those processes. And I look at that visual representation of the processes. And I say, going from this stage to that stage, how do I know if it's working? What metric would tell me if it's working? And I'll give you an example. For me and my team, we utilize a simple stoplight method, and this is actually what it means. So if my team has the metric as green, that essentially means that we're on track and I don't need to worry about it. We're either at par or above where we need to be. Secondly, if I show up to a meeting and my team has a metric marked as yellow, that tells me that, hey, we're off pace, but no big deal. We have a plan to get back on track. And sometimes I show up to a meeting and guess what? The metric's red. And all that means is, hey, we're off pace. This is a little out of my wheelhouse. I'm not sure what I should be doing to get back on track, and I would just like to run it by the team. Sometimes I deal with these roofing business owners, and they get all worked up if their scorecards, has a bunch of red and yellows on it. They think their job is just to keep everything in the green. But dude, business is hard, and first and foremost. And secondly, the reality is if you have all greens on your scorecard at every single meeting that you guys run, then the reality is your goals aren't big enough. And so as even a manager, my job is not to keep everything in the green. It's to turn the reds into yellows and to keep us pushing to get the yellows to a green, but then for me to get the greens turned back to a yellow, because I need to keep raising the bar for my team to keep stretching them even further. Third and final piece of essentially moving you from the manager seat into the seat of a CEO and allowing you to exit the day-to-day of the company is what I call the pulse. And I call it the pulse because it's quite literally the heartbeat of the entire company, of the organization, of this system that we're building. And what I mean is that the processes, the playbooks, the people, the scorecards, all of those things are great. But if you're anything like me, I had read a ton of books. Some of the books I listed earlier, EOS, Build Like Clockwork or Run Like Clockwork, Traction, EOS, any business book that you could, that you've probably read before or that people have recommended to you, I've read. And I read in the beginning, and guess what? I would build the tools out and I would get 6 months down the road and I'd be like, hey, what happened to that thing that we built? The SOPs or the org charts or the roles and responsibilities that we had built out. And the reality is that if you don't have a meeting pulse that keeps you on track for getting together every week, same day, same time, and nothing else can take its place. If you don't have a meeting every 30 days to do a monthly business review, to look in the rearview mirror and say, what's the reality of what happened back here in the last 30 days? If we don't have a reset every quarter to get back together, and we don't take those meetings seriously, and we don't utilize these tools within those meetings on the weekly basis, on the monthly basis, on the quarterly basis, we might as well throw all of this out the window. So all of these things we just talked about over the last few minutes, put together, I call them an operating system. And if you have an operating system, if you build out all of these tools and you implement them through the pulse, like I just explained to you guys, it will help you grow magnificently, financially within the business, methodically within the business, as in, growing level by level and just becoming a more mature business. But most importantly, as a refined leader and as a forged leader that's actually been through the trenches of building something impressive. And honestly, if you watch this video back, everything I've talked about is relatively simple. It's easy to comprehend. It's actually just doing the work that is the work. And so in doing all of these things, you are working on the business, but in turn, the business and these systems and this process of building this operating system are actually working on you. And if, through the process, you can navigate knocking out this whole system step by step, you're able to then see the business in a whole new perspective and see business through a whole new lens. Think about it. Your phone, your computer, pretty much any piece of technology they all have an operating system, right? iPhones are on iOS, Androids are, basically sticks and stones riding on tablets, whatever. But at the end of the day, even the operating systems in something as crazy developed as an iPhone are still getting better. They continue to have updates, right? Your computer, it updates every time you need to hop on a Zoom call or anytime you need to do something important or send something to somebody. It's like, of course, they have the best timing. But the reality is like those things, all joking aside, those things are always getting better. So it would be crazy to think that you're gonna build this. And so I wanna set the stage for you. It would be asinine for you to think that you're gonna build this system and it's gonna be good to go. The truth is you're gonna build this first version and it's gonna get better over the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and multiple years down the road. And you'll be able to look back at the different iterations of your version of an iPhone 1, an iPhone 5, an iPhone 10, and whatever number we're on now. And it's just a beautiful journey of building the business. Business is a long-term playing game, right? We don't play the game of marriage, let's say, to there is no end to it, right? It's an infinite game, and I look at business the exact same way. So to think that, again, you're gonna build this overnight and it's gonna operate awesome and you're gonna just, step out of the role is not the truth. But the only way to step out of that role from worker to manager to CEO is to go through the process. So at the beginning of this video, we talked about exiting the business, right? I said that most business owners I speak to, or, probably people in general, when they hear exit in a business sense, they are thinking actually exiting the company as an actual acquisition, potentially, or like in my case, staying on as an investor even through an acquisition. This is my favorite thing to talk about because this is the ultimate goal of business. And the only thing that allows you to do this is the preceding exits that we just talked about over the last few minutes. Because in the first two exits, what we're doing is we're doing the things necessary to build what's called enterprise value within the business, which is just a fancy way of saying we're making the business worth something. We're making it sellable so that one day somebody could come in and see value outside of you, right? You want to build enterprise value into the business so that there's no key man risk. Like if you go away, guess what? The business is still valuable to somebody else. But here's something that I lucked into when I sold Jag Roofing and sheet metal is that, look, you can do all of this on your own. You can take the months and the years and put the sweat equity in to build all of the processes to build this business on your own. And at the end of the day, your business will be valued on its net profits, on EBITDA, or essentially in a more basic way, the money that's left over after everyone's paid, including yourself. But in a world where you've actually built that business, a profitable business, a sellable business, as a standalone company, meaning that you own basically the entire company and you're not a part of a group, you might be able to sell that business for somewhere between a 2 to 5 multiple, meaning that maybe a 6 multiple if you're lucky. Meaning that at the end of the year, if you have made $1 million like in EBITDA, in net profits, you have left over $1 million in the bank account at the end of the year. You could sell that business for, let's say, $2 to $6 million, depending on the specifics like the risk or the debt or the all of the things that go into formulating that actual valuation. But here's the secret, and here's what I actually lucked into. When you're a part of a group of companies that are all operating on the same model, you are all navigating business in a similar manner. You're operating on similar CRMs or have your CRM set up in a similar way to track your processes all the way through. You're reporting your financials all in one place or the same way through something like QuickBooks or Sage or any other platform. You automatically increase your valuation by at least double just from being in proximity, being in that group of companies, because the more the merrier. And that's how the banks see it. That's how private equity sees it. That's how these investors that end up buying these groups and these roll-ups that you hear of, right? Like the roll-up I was a part of. That's why we get valued so high, because you have more than one company, there's value in numbers. And the best part about it is like, if you can find a good group that's going to execute on this play correctly or in a strategic manner that's going to be advantageous for all of the owners that are a part of this group. Number one, you should be able to take chips off the table within the first couple years, meaning that you're going to take majority of the money from the business, from the value of the business, and you're going to put it in your pocket. You create a portfolio of investments, or you do whatever you need to do to strategically set your family up and set yourself up for everything you worked your ass off for in building this business. But like I said, when set up strategically and set up correctly, there should be more liquidity events. There should be more payouts down the road, as long as you keep rolling over some of your ownership into that larger group. Because guess what? If it's done correctly, they just keep running the same play after the same play after the same play, bringing in more and more companies. And this has happened in all kinds of industries all across the world, from the trash industry to the tech industry, and it's now here in the roofing world. So my job in the day-to-day is essentially to help roofing entrepreneurs exit the field, exit the day-to-day, and then ultimately exit the business. And so the way we do that is by building the operating systems that we spoke about today, and then setting you up to find a subsidiary or a group of companies that can pool together for that ultimate exit. If this resonates with you, obviously no pressure if it doesn't, but if it does, send me a message on Facebook. Let's connect and let's just have a quick chat. And if it makes sense, if you're in the right spot, in the right position to start to set up a business in this way, I'll let you know and we can talk about next steps from there. But regardless, I love to talk about the roofing business. I love to talk to roofing entrepreneurs. It's in my blood. It's what I've done my entire professional life for the last 15 years. And I'm happy to have a conversation. So if it makes sense, send me a DM. I look forward to connecting with you guys there. I'll see you guys in the next video.